So I wanted to just quickly talk off script about actual genuine concern I have about Splatoon 3. I really do not believe this game will be ready by 2022, and here is why. So back in 2014, when Nintendo showed off Splatoon 1 for the first time, the only things actually done with that game was what Nintendo showed then. They had around 10% of the game actually done, which leads me to believe that the only thing Nintendo has to show so far for the Splatoon 3 project is what we saw in that trailer and the new hub world, and even then there's probably a lot missing from it. I don't think that Nintendo has nearly enough gear to call this thing a new game. I don't think they have any maps done besides what they've shown us so far. I think they have around 8 weapons to show for the game so far, and those are the weapons they showed in the trailer. The ink bow is the only new thing they have done right now. I'm almost certain of it, seeing as Nintendo's track record has shown, they don't prepare for these things well. They just drop them, and then expect to cover them up later, and I'm really afraid that is the same route Splatoon 3 is currently taking. If what Nogami said back in 2019 is true, where Nintendo hadn't started working on Splatoon 3 after the Final Fest, and rather they started development after they finished Animal Crossing, that means that they've been working on that game for like 11 months so far, which means they could probably have more to show from it than what they actually showed off in that trailer, but I really don't think so. I'm really afraid that Nintendo is going to botch this hard, and hopefully if they did end up botching this, they just delay it a bit longer, like what they did with Animal Crossing. Because remember, in these 11 months, we've been under lockdown. And Japan, especially in the last few months, not recently, but a little while back, had heavy lockdowns. So people were working from home, which means development was slowed down. So let's say they really have like 7 months of progress done. 7 months of progress is not really something you want to be showing off a teaser trailer for something that's going to come out next year, especially for Nintendo. Keep in mind, we saw the first Breath of the Wild 2 trailer back in 2019, and we are all accepting the fact right now that we aren't going to see this game until 2022. I don't want to say that Nogami's team is incompetent, because that's not true at all. They've made my favorite game series of all time and my favorite game of all time. But however, these things have come after unkept promises. Remember, Animal Crossing New Horizons was supposed to come out in 2019. They did delay it, and it made the game a lot better probably, but they shouldn't have made that promise to begin with, because most likely they knew it was going to take longer than anticipated. And with Splatoon 3 having maybe like roughly 7 months to show of development and planning to release it next year, does not really show that Splatoon 3 is going to be a good sequel. It's just going to be a sequel. And it looks like they're trying some new things, but if all the new game really has to show is a new campaign, an ink bow, and the squid surge and the squid roll, that's 3 new things. And they have like some redesigned weapons, they're just going to end up functioning the same way. So why even change them at all? I really hope they don't botch this, because Splatoon 3 is something I've been looking forward to since the Final Fest back in 2019. It sucks that Splatoon 2 had to end support so fast, and that's probably why they're doing Splatoon 3, just so they can keep supporting it to sell more and make more money, but it's not worth it if the thing's just gonna suck. And I really think Nintendo is just looking at the number 3 and thinking about how much money they can produce. And I really hope they aren't just putting the pressure on Nogami and his team to just get this out in time. I really hope they give them all the time they need, and if Nogami thinks they can get this done in under a year, then Godspeed. One of 2 things has happened here. Either A, Nogami lied in 2019 when he said there was no current plan to work on Splatoon 3. So what I mean by this is when Nogami said that, they already knew exactly what they were doing. When the Final Fest was over, they had a story that they had already decided on. Let's say in this scenario, they wrote 2 stories. They have a story plot for Splatoon 3 if Order won and if Chaos won. And they saw that Chaos won, they went with the Chaos plot. If Order had won instead, they would have just gone with the Order plot. But that doesn't really explain when they would have all the time to like make the areas that the game would take place in, like we're seeing with the Splatlands right now. It's a big, vast, open desert that definitely shows the ruins of humanity. But what would the environment be like if Order won? Like, how fast would they have been able to cook that one up together? Because I would assume Order would be like a much more populated, dense city, looking super futuristic. Not dense like Inkopolis, but like almost like cyberpunk maybe? But how long would that have taken to go together, Lid? If Splatoon 3 had an Order victory in an Order setting, would this be released in 2023? Because they need to make a much more denser world? I guess it's not really the question that needs to be asked so much, since we don't have to deal with that scenario, but it just still comes back around to the whole Splatoon 1 had most of its development done in 1 year, and we gave Splatoon 2 a break with not being such an innovative sequel because Nintendo had a lot of hardships they were dealing with at the time, so they needed to do something safe, and they played Splatoon 2 very safe. How safe, you may ask? Well, like around half the maps are reused maps from Splatoon 1. There was not enough put into creating new maps. Yeah, Splatoon 2 did have a lot of new maps, however, they had way too many Splatoon 1 maps. Like, I recently got a Wii U to borrow from my friend, and playing Splatoon 1, there's always a Splatoon 2 map in rotation there, just about always, because they brought over so many maps from Splatoon 1. Like, I can understand wanting to bring over the maps, because, like, no one played Splatoon 1, because no one had a Wii U, but, like, if you're gonna do it, just commit to the whole thing, say, hey, we want to bring all the Splatoon 1 maps back, and just do it. But that's not what they did. They only brought over certain maps for some reason. So let's just summarize this all up real quick. So I don't believe that 2022 will really end up being the year that it launches in, because Nintendo has not had enough time to make this game. Unless they started this game a lot further back than what they actually told us, then we have no reason to believe that this will be a super innovative sequel that we really have been needing for Splatoon for a while. For all we know from what Nogami has told us, this is a standard 3 years development time, just put the new shooter game out. And this is hopefully not an element of shooter culture that Nintendo is taking and using for Splatoon, whereas they take like 3 years to pump out a new game, and it does like nothing different. I really want Splatoon 3 to show that it's different from Splatoon 2 with more than just 3 ways and a few new maps. And we already know that Nintendo is hiring more people to port maps from Splatoon 2 and 1 over to Splatoon 3. How is that going to make sense story-wise? Because all those maps take place in Inkopolis, and Nintendo has told us we are super far away from Inkopolis. B, who really wants to be playing on maps like Kelp Dome and Camp Triggerfish for another 3 more years? We've been playing on this map since 2015. It is time to just be done with it. I really do not like that Splatoon 3 is still going to have a focus on bringing back old maps. And it really makes me more afraid that Nintendo does still plan on just taking the same safe strategy. Hopefully they don't, but if they've only been developing this game since 2019, I wouldn't be that surprised. Like, yeah, I know by then it'll have been 3 years, but still, what would you guys rather more? A Splatoon 3 game that took like 4 or 5 years to develop, and we got something that Splatoon fans could never even imagine in our wildest dreams, or just Splatoon 2.5 in the desert. I am really afraid that we are going to get Splatoon 2.5 in the desert, and I guess you can say that we haven't really had enough gameplay footage to figure out if this is going to be the case, and we're not really going to know until Nintendo shows us more, but honestly, it feels like we're not going to see anything for a while. It's really cool that they had gameplay to show off. That really does make me feel a little more confident. And I do like that they did show off a new map rather than just play on a returning map in the trailer. If they would have played on a returning map, I would have been much more afraid, and you guys should have been too. But it does show that they are kicking up the old map development team again. They are going to wake them up for this. They're not just going to port maps over the whole time, hopefully. But still, the idea persists that a Splatoon game developed for like 5 years rather than like 2 or 3 years would be much better, because I think it's very likely that Splatoon 3 did not start development until at earliest March 21st, 2020, which means when they revealed it, they were working on it for less than 11 months, like I said prior. But anyways, I think that's going to be it for me today. What do you guys think about Splatoon 3? I'm a little worried, as you can tell, but who knows, I may be the only one. Anyways, let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and I will see you later, gamers.